I like how you. Then you also.
That's legit.
Yeah, it's legit. It works. You also stop and start it, which also is more effective.
Is there a glare on my glasses? I guess this is fine, right?
All right, here we go. Ready?
Ready.
What does it take to become an influencer? How do you treat your personal brand like a business? Every Friday, I'm going to interview social media influencers about their stories that go beyond the 140 character limit. From humble beginnings to a forever trending future, this podcast takes an honest look at the triumphs and stumbles of social media stardom. Whether you're looking to simply grow your follower count or become the next Instagram influencer, you'll come away inspired.
Mike's coming on?
Welcome to the Influence Show. I'm Sarah Crilley, joined by an influencer in his own right, Mr. Joshua Hart.
Hello.
Josh, before we get started here, I just need to remind our audience all about you for our followers, all of our growing followers here with the Influence Show. You know, you have been known in radio with brands like Mix 102.9 radio stations, The Edge, 13 years in radio, which is a vast history that you've been able to bring to Real News Communications. And I would be amiss if I wouldn't be able to shout out to Real News Communications Network, because here we are in the studios, and I'm so excited to be here.
That's right. I have been repping the brand for quite some time. I started off in radio for 13 years, working for Mix, and then Mix flipped to Now, and then moving from Now to The Edge, and then Edge flipped to Star, and radio's kind of a topsy-turvy place. I got tired of that after about 13 years, and luckily came here and got to join the team here.
Yes, and how does it feel to be interviewed? I mean, you've spent so many years interviewing others, and now here I am, and you are in the hot seat.
It's not as fun as being on the other side of it, to be quite honest with you. I'm not having nearly as much as fun. Not knowing what I'm going to be asked, and the anticipation is exciting.
But a growing audience on those shows, those are those that you really were able to connect with over the years. Tell me a little bit about that, because I know that as media is changing, did you keep up with those followers? I mean, people would see you off the street and say, oh my gosh, I know you from The Edge, I know you from Mix.
Yeah, no, it was really crazy. So I spent, I'd say probably my most amount of following I had was probably with Mix and with The Edge.
I mean, you were in rock concerts.
Yeah.
They would send you out on junkets and put you on stage.
There was once, before I was an actual, co-host. There was once, and this is like the start of me about to go on to the air. They called me and they're like, hey Josh, there's a kids, and I don't even know what they're called anymore, but there's this kids band that's playing at the House of Blues, the noon show, so you know it's for kids. The noon show, can you go? They want a host to come out there and do the thing, and none of our talent is going to go. Would you go and host the show? And so I was like, oh, you know what? Yeah, I'd love to. It's so cool for me. Yeah, I made it. I went on the main stage, House of Blues, and then I walk out there and they hand me the script and I memorize it and go over everything. And they want to know, turned out to be giant tools. They want to know exactly what I was going to say, how I was going to say it. I'm like, you guys are doing the noon show at House of Blues. You know, take it down 5 octaves. So even first time out of the gate, I still was had a sense of where I was in the world. Because the road manager for the jungle, the jungle boogie gang, whoever it was still trying to put me in my place. So
reaching audiences through airwaves, and then you moved to Dallas Morning News and Guideline.
Yeah, so when I moved from Mix, so every talent had to have a blog, had to have some sort of blog that they posted.
So airwaves to now the written word.
Yeah,
was that paradigm shift for you?
It was something I wasn't comfortable with. I liked vamping and just talking on the air and talking about things that were happening.
Totally talk on your feet.
Putting it into words, sitting down and actually having to do something is a lot harder for me to get done. But at Mix, I did a blog called Josh's Odd Jobs.
Okay.
Where I would go around and do odd jobs all over town. I was a night at medieval times. I fed alligators at the zoo, just random things. And then when I moved to The Edge, they go, you have to have more aggressive, more manly blog for The Edge.
And around what year was this? Because I think for some of our followers and listeners of the show, it's very interesting to see throughout the times, I guess you'll say, in the digital era, where things started to move from year to year to year.
Probably 2013, 2012.
Blogs were super hot.
Yeah.
Especially in the media, too.
Oh, yeah. So they're like, hey, Josh, you have to change your blog. It can't be this soccer mom joshing around where you're being like dad jokes. It has to be like a serious, manly blog. And so I was like, well, I'll write about like Scotch and bourbon. That's what I like, and so that's what I'll write about. And so I just kind of like started writing about it, going, hey, here's a bottle that I bought, and here's how it tasted, and here's what I liked about it, and it's pretty simple. And then I started noticing that I was getting a lot of people that were like asking me questions, like I was like a professional, and I wasn't. I was just like
they were genuinely curious about the subject matter, which is very interesting.
Yeah, which was kind of a scary point to me, that anyone who writes about it doesn't necessarily have to be a professional in it. And so then I got a call from a call from the Dallas Morning News, and they were like, hey, Josh, we saw your blog on The Edge. And we want to know...
You know you're legit, just to pause, when people in the hallway start taking pictures. I think we've arrived on the influence show. Don't let me hanging on the air.
They're probably like, that's Jack Black in there being interviewed.
No, they're like, this is the whiskey and bourbon guy.
Yeah. And so Dallas Morning News called me like, hey, you gotta come and write for us, the Dallas Morning News. And I was like, done. I'll come write for you for the Dallas Morning News. Yeah. So that kind of changed up how I was writing and what I was going into it. And I was writing at least, so their rule was you had to write at least one thing every week. And so I was
Wow, that's a big commitment.
Yeah.
I mean, taking it from, again, your background in morning show radio, and that's no joke. I mean, was that stressful in its own right to spend that much time content-wise for several hours versus a weekly commitment to a blog? Like, where were your mindset-wise?
So the good thing is I was able to use that as my blog for the show. So I was able to double post, which is great. And then the next thing I had to do is go, hey, how can I afford this habit? Because that's 4 bottles a month. And so I went out and I reached out to Goody Cootie, who I had a good relationship with here in Dallas, and said, how would you like to sponsor my blog?
Fantastic.
And they were like,
bold.
yeah, they're like, I would love to sponsor your blog.
No kidding.
Yeah, and so they brought me 4 bottles every month and dropped them off, and they were always really nice brands that they were trying to push. And so I started getting like Glenfiddich and Macallan and Balvenie, a lot of the really like more like mid-level to high-range brands, and that got me some attention from the Macallan people who have an office here in town. So they reached out to me like, hey, can you come and tour our facilities and talk to us?
And again, timeline-wise, was this still 2013 or have we
we're probably in like 2014, 2015, so about 2 years. But at first, I was just thrilled with getting free alcohol. And that was like, I'm amped about just that. That's great.
I think for some of us too, that is kind of the inspiration is, hey, this is something I'm passionate about or I genuinely enjoy, so why don't I just share that with the world?
Well, and then I got to do countless number of tastings and tours and sit downs.
And were they inviting you or were you reaching out to them?
It got to a point where they were reaching out to me. So I would get phone calls from PR firms, touring groups. Hey, we're sending the head distiller from like Woodford Reserve is coming in to talk to you for a blog. Can you interview him? I would love to. And of course, he would bring in his like, hey, and then you got to try like super secret things that like didn't have a label on them. There's like a glass bottle that they're working on. Yeah, it was really cool. But over that process, I genuinely learned a lot about the spirit and a lot about the different expressions that each house has. And I grew into someone who was very knowledgeable on the topic. Where now I still get calls all the time. Hey, I'm buying my dad a gift. He likes this. What should I buy him? I'm like, oh yeah, you should buy him this.
That's huge. I'm fascinated. So just to take a step back for our audience, your career, you've attached yourself to these growing brands. When we're talking about brands like the radio stations and then the morning news and then Guide Live, right? For those that are starting out and they're going bold on their own brand, what advice would you give? I mean, and when did you transition from, okay, I'm going to be a contributor to these media outlets to, hey, I am the subject matter expert. I'm going to put my flag in the sand and be my own brand and start some social media channels and really get my content out there or become a hub of the contributor factor. Do you understand my question?
Yeah, I know this is true.
Not everybody has the opportunities that you've had and the talent base, quite frankly, in the vast realm of talent that you have to be able to just jump right in. Do you have to start somewhere? I mean, I know that too, for our audience, you were a bus driver. You had some humble beginnings to where you, hey.
Bus driving was awesome. Point out,
bus driver to radio host to continue, you know what I mean? Like, you have to start somewhere. So I think that for the majority of our audience that is very interested in influence and influencers and how do you get started?
So the two things I'll
What's the
say
mindset?
is know what your purpose is. So for me, my purpose in the beginning was I have to do this for my job.
Mm-hmm.
I have to write a blog. I'm not going to write about my feelings journal or about things I care about that are going to be super easy and manageable. I have to like it, and it has to be doable. Otherwise, you tend to trail off. I would go on junkets. So I was flown out to Denver. I've been flown out to Scotland. I've been flown out to Mexico to like tour different distilleries. And the people that were alongside me were everything from writers from Huffington Post and BuzzFeed to people who just had their own personal blog. They bought a $99 Squarespace page and went to
And again,
town.
what year was this again? Because I think
This
there
was
is a nice shift
15.
where brands are recognizing influencers and micro-influencers and mom blogs and people that aren't attached to the bigger brands, but maybe you had kind of the first opportunity.
There's two guys out there. They're called this is a little name drop here. They're called the Scotch Test Dummies.
We'll tag them.
Yeah, the Scotch Test Dummies were two guys in their like 50s, late 40s, early 50s, who, same as me, just loved alcohol. And as I was on the Dallas Morning News, they were reaching out to me like, oh, that's so cool that you get to do this. We have this very humble YouTube page that we're doing. They have turned that YouTube page into a full-time business. Just by staying consistent, posting, and they started off with dad jokes, but they added more and more finesse to it, and now it's a full-time thing. They sell shirts and merchandise, and they go all over the place and talk about whiskey and Scotch and bourbon. So it's a huge field, but I would say whatever it is, as long as it's obtainable, you can do it within the time frame that you have, and being honest. You're passionate about doing it, because there's going to come a point in time if you think, hey, this will make me famous, or I see people online who post pictures with their hair or pictures in bikinis, whatever it is, and I can do that. But if you're not passionate about doing that, that will wear off. The fun wears off. When I was in my 50th blog, I was ugh, another blog about Scotch. Okay.
How many times do we have to reinvent the wheel?
But that newness wears off. And so if there's no passion behind it, then you just stop doing it. And other than that, it's just keep going. Never be afraid to ask. Never be afraid to email, reach out. Always try to network and grow with other people. I never did any of that. I just so happened to luck into having connections because I was at iHeart. Connections with the Dallas Morning News, who hey, we need someone who can fill this role because everybody wants to write about craft beer and they don't want to write about Scotch or bourbon or whiskey. And you are, and you're doing it, and they just grabbed me and. So.
Well, and for you, it comes around full circle, right? Because, for you in radio, and now you are leading the charge with this digital broadcast production company within the walls of Real News PR, Real News Communications. You're now coaching these clients of ours to start their own shows and be bold and get out there with their personal brands. Tell me a little bit about the mindset and why it's so important to really stay consistent, have a show, and what that looks like when you're trying to keep up with content, because content's out there, it's everywhere. You can have a blog, you can have a social media page, but talk a little bit about the brands that we're now building here at Real News PR, just to kind of talk about the everyday people that have something to say, that are experts within their own right, but just don't know how to get started or have the confidence to be able to host a show. What is that like? Because I think we do live in a world now where podcasting is hot, but people don't exactly know where to get started. They almost get overthinking it. And even starting this show, my brother is the executive producer with this concept. I started way overthinking it. And he goes, no, we're just going to get started. You're just going to start interviewing people and get to know their story.
Yeah, I mean, we have a really talented team here, which helps. All of us come from radio background, and we've all either co-hosted or produced other shows. And we know that sometimes people overthink the process. And the best way to get better at doing something is doing it.
And riding it.
I go back to riding a bike, so I was going to say. You don't learn to ride a bike by sitting and watching the bike or polishing it or making sure all the lug nuts are tight or walking beside it for a while to get the feel of it. You learn to ride a bike by hopping on a bike and going. And you'll fall and be awkward in the beginning, but that's part of the process. My first few reviews were awful. They were really short, and I don't even know if they were accurate. That's what I smelled when I smelled it, so I don't know, orange and mint, I don't know. But you learn. You pick up on things, you learn from people, and you grow. And that's part of the process. And don't be afraid of that process. Don't be afraid to get in front of a TV and go, hey, here's what I'm passionate about, here's what I care about, and here's what I want to share. You'll find an audience. It may not be millions, but that's fine. In this day and age, relating to 2,000 people who care about you and care about what you care about is way more important than having millions of people who don't know you that well.
I think you couldn't have said that better. And I think to be bold and to say, all right, I'm going out there, I'm going to interview people, I've got a brand. Brands evolve, your passion will evolve, but think about documenting the journey and being able to go back on a credibility factor to say, hey, remember, here's where I started 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and here where I am now, and everything's documented. I think that's just really, really cool.
That's great.
And certain people that you're getting to know along the way really do help develop those brands and in your own personal brand.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Well, thanks so much for being on the show, Josh.
Anytime.
Do you have any advice to give our aspiring influencers and people that want to get out there, that want to have their voice heard, that want to just grow their brand?
Find something you care about and just start doing it. Start doing it and then be thoughtful in the ways that you're growing it. So don't just scattershot, but go, hey, I'm doing this and here's my goal. Have a goal in mind of what you want to achieve. After you achieve that goal, find your next goalpost that you want to hit. And always be working toward those goalposts. You can always readjust after you get to that goalpost and go, actually, I didn't want to be here. I wanted to be here. So let me readjust and head back that way. But have a goal in mind and just work toward that goal.
And of course, thank you so much. We need to tag all of your social media channels to keep up with you, to ask questions about the bourbon, the best places to drink whiskey, and all of your travels. Because I know that you've done a lot of traveling with whiskey. Talk about that and also where we can follow you on your journeys.
I just started a Facebook page. It's called Word of Whiskey.
I like it.
Yeah, it's great. On Facebook, you'll see my face on there. I have a Twitter page as well. It's Mr. Joshua Hart. So you can follow me on that as well.
All right, guys. Thanks so much for joining us for this episode of Influence, and we'll see you next time.
All right, we're clear. Nice.
We covered a lot of ground.
Covered a lot of ground. Yeah.
We were riding the bike and then we were reading the bike. I thought you were talking about writing. So.
Right.
Hey, Josh, will you poke your head in later?
Yes, sir. I'll do it right now.
Okay. Salmon?
Huh? I already ate.
You ate. Okay.
No, I'll poke my head in the.